The sun rises slowly over the hills. Everywhere is golden sunlight, but still, most nights with hotels are crowded. There are days with dark clouds are shrouded. They don't smile and they never will. Only volunteers get the fill. Empty promises is what they hear. No running water from year to year. Hearts that no one desire. That if there is a Messiah, someday he hear their whispered prayer. Covered always bare and scanty. 10 people in a one-bedroom shanty. Forced to sell on the pavement. No vacancy, no employment. Cattle fire cracker from gunshots. Blood just flow when things get hot. Afraid to look out the window. To hear voices from the ghetto. Crying, 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 Lord, Lord, crying, crying. Voices from the ghetto. Crying, 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 Lord, Lord, crying. Voices from the ghetto. Help us, Father. Lord. Mothers just hold their head on ball. Stronger than a wall. A big pusher iron son in jail for manslaughter. Too bad for him, he and them bad boys. No bail, that's the black man's choice. Like shadow say, hell. Little girl child belly start to swell. Some say life is a cycle, but don't draw she no circle. Where will it all end? Only time will tell. Outside the siren keep howling, inside your belly will growling. Police raid very often. Simpson measuring a coffin. One night in bed you're sleeping. Next night is a wave that you're keeping. So you're praying to win the lotto, not to hear voices from the ghetto. Crying, 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 crying.
Good evening, citizens. My name is Jomo Thomas. The program you're about to listen to is called The Voices. This is the Voices program for September 9th, 2024. We have a good program as normal lined up for you tonight. Tonight with me is the noted Trinidadian American civil rights immigration attorney, Mr. Brian Figueroa. He would spend the next hour and 50 minutes with us. But before we do that, we would do as we normally do. I would read my column for last week. My column for last week is entitled Plotting to Destroy the World. Plotting to destroy the planet. And it goes like this. The mad rulers of planet Earth are inching closer to ending life as we know it. Sadly, few responsible and outspoken voices raise the alarm about the rapidly deteriorating international situation. 2 weeks ago, President Biden announced a new nuclear strategy with immediate attention directed towards the People's Republic of China. Last week, Russia declared that it had reassessed and redirected its nuclear policy to respond to America's aggressive policies. North Korea is said to be on constant nuclear alert as it responds to the pressures and threats to its very existence. These days, unthinkable military actions are taken with such ease that it is as though the world leaders are having lunch rather than gambling on Earth's future. In September 2022, Western governments performed a previously unimaginable feat. They blew up a Russian-owned Nord Stream pipeline. The cheaper gas was intended to strengthen economic ties between Russia and Western Europe. 7 months into the Russian invasion of Ukraine, to prevent the presence of NATO's forces on its doorsteps, and 2 months after President Biden declared the line will be destroyed, the underwater explosion occurred. Keep in mind that Russia is one of the oldest nuclear powers and is said to hold the largest arsenal of nuclear weapons. Russia exercised restraint. The Americans are intent on testing and stoking the Russian bear. As the war in the Ukraine prolonged, the disastrous consequence for Ukrainians, the US and its NATO allies have reneged on everything they said would not be done. First, they noted that NATO troops or military specialists will not enter the war. Today, there is open acknowledgement that highly trained American, British, and French military personnel are fighting and dying in Ukraine. It was also announced that American weapons would not be used to strike targets in Russia. 1 month ago, Ukrainian forces entered the Kursk region in southern Russia, armed with Western armaments, including Abrams tanks. If these developments were not dangerous enough, things are about to get even scarier. Reuters News reports that the US is close to agreeing to give Ukraine military long-range missiles to strike deep inside Russia. This dangerous escalation places all of us, indeed the entire world, at risk. Sadly, unlike decades ago when there was an active and vibrant peace movement, today there's just a sliver of protests. And as we saw with the protests against Western-supported Israeli aggression and genocide on colleges and universities regarding Palestine, the government has executed a criminal assault against student protesters. The anti-Israeli encampments have been destroyed, and students are being warned not to exercise their constitutional rights to free speech and assembly. Independent journalists are harassed, stopped at the airports, and prevented from traveling, while others are arrested and denied avenues to publish their works. We are at a dangerous juncture in world affairs, but most people are not alert to the troubles. Only a mass awakening of people worldwide, I'll read it again. Only a mass awakening of people and worldwide protests would stay the hands of the mad dogs of war and prevent the destruction of life on earth. Meanwhile, in our Caribbean, the American government continues its punitive, aggressive policies against governments it opposed. Last week, the American government seized an executive jet used by top Venezuelan officials, including President Maduro. The plane was seized in the Dominican Republic and flown to Florida. This recent act, a clear violation of international law, is in addition to over 2,000 sanctions leveled against Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Cuba has been embargoed for more than 60 years illegally and improperly listed as a sponsor of international terrorism. It must be remembered, though, for those of us in the Caribbean, that the only time there was an international terrorist attack was in 1976, when a group of anti-Cuban terrorists, with the support of the American CIA, blew up the Cubana airline off Barbados, killing 73 persons on board. Venezuela, one of the wealthiest countries on the planet, has been placed in an economic stranglehold because of its government's desire to share the riches of the nation with the population rather than allow a small parasitic elite to get fat while their people remain deprived. For that commitment, the Americans blocked all loans and credit to Venezuela and sabotaged and destroyed its oil and petrol sector, thus causing millions to flee their home in despair. In Honduras, Xiomara Castro has accused the Americans of attempting to instigate a military coup against her government. It must be remembered, in 2009, her husband Manuel Zelaya was overthrown in what was described as Obama's first coup. On top of this is the simmering dispute between the Brazilian government and the American investor and world richest man, Elon Musk. Musk is refusing to accept the decision of the Brazilian judiciary regarding X's business dealing in Brazil. Musk is no newcomer to confusion and the sowing of strife in our Americas. In 2019, it must be remembered, Evo Morales, Bolivia's first indigenous leader, was forced from office and exiled after a military coup. Musk was said to be one of the persons behind Morales' ouster. Bolivia has huge deposits of lithium, a key mineral used in the production of batteries. Musk said then If a country had minerals his company needed, he was prepared to coup or overthrow the legitimate government to gain access and control. There is also a brewing conflict between the American government and Mexico. Last week, the American ambassador expressed opposition to a proposal by President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, the outgoing leader of that country. The proposal is to hold direct elections for judges in Mexico. The American ambassador, Ken Salazar, claimed the proposal posed a threat to democracy in Mexico. Never mind that across the United States, judges are routinely elected. Lopez Obrador, in response, said that the U.S. has long pursued an internationalist policy towards the Americas, an interventionist policy towards the Americas, and described Salazar's comments as unfortunate, imprudent, and disrespectful of Mexico's national sovereignty. Meanwhile, from September 4th to 6th, dozens of African leaders gathered in Beijing for the Africa China Summit to discuss trade, investment, and development. The next BRICS summit will also loom soon, with Russia acting as host. BRICS, originally comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are rapidly expanding. BRICS represent 45% of the world population and 28% of global gross domestic product. BRICS also holds a significant share of the world's natural resources, including producing 45% of the world's oil. Its ultimate goal is to create an alternative economic bloc to Western institutions and reduce dependence on the US dollar. As the American dominance in the world wanes, Washington acts even more aggressively to show up its imperial ambition. That was my piece from last week. Brian, um, here we
Well,
are.
that
It's
was
good
a
to
great
see you
piece,
again,
man.
my brother. It's good to see you.
Good to see you also.
Good to see you. We go all the way back. We go all the way back to Brooklyn College
Yeah,
in the
3 decades, right?
1980s.
Yeah.
It's amazing how time flies and how you have
I,
now emerged as this top civil rights, human rights, immigration lawyer in New York. Thank you for joining us. I know that a lot of people, particularly many of our people here in St. Vincent, many of our listeners in the United States would be glad to share your when you share your insights on so many of the issues concerning immigration and civil rights. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. And, I left Trinidad and Tobago, came to Brooklyn, another island, and here I met everyone from the Caribbean. So
Yeah.
you're more Caribbean, I think, in America than you're in the Caribbean, being a Caribbean person. Um, but that was a very good article there, Jomo. It summarized actually what has been going on for obviously decades. And the only interest America have is business. It's not about human rights, it's about business rights. And whether they're Democrats or Republicans, it actually doesn't make a difference.
Absolutely.
The irony of the elections right now is that KKK, Russia, and Trump, which was what I call him, and Kamala, they are fighting and they, in the battleground state of Georgia, and Trump is fighting for black votes. And I find that obviously very ironic. Um, but, Jomo, the big problem that we have is a lack of education.
A lack of what?
Education.
A lack of education. Okay.
So in the United States of America, they really don't educate their people. They have censored their people for hundreds of years, whether it be slavery, whether it be the civil rights era. Americans do not have real uncensored education. They think that the United States is the world, which obviously it isn't. And, you know, it's sometimes you may say, okay, is it a black or white thing? But it's more a Western culture thing. Um, it's also an evolutionary thing also, because you could only evolve and become a better human being if you have all the information, correct information at your hands. So when we have people throughout the US making statements that are against humanity, against what really supposed to be democracy, it's a shame, and it's also very frustrating.
Yeah.
Um, I have three boys growing up in the system now, 14, 13, and 12, and you have a responsibility to really educate them, because they will grow up like other blacks and minorities and white folks, not really getting a proper education in America. Um, they wouldn't understand 90% of the issues that you just spoke
Well, it
about.
is our responsibility to teach them, Brian, because
Mhm.
when we were at Brooklyn College in the 1980s, we were fortunate in the sense that not only did we get an education in the classroom, but we had a number of different organizations with persons and leaders who were instrumental in ensuring that many of us get an education which was not only what the establishment wanted us to get. So we had, for
Westernized.
example, the Black Family, we
Right.
had the Caribbean Students Union,
Mhm.
and we were fortunate to have progressive leadership in both of those. They would bring a number of important personalities, Dr. Benja Cannon, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. All of those were individuals who came to the school and helped in our education. But you're right. If we are depending on school, if we're depending on college for education, we may not get that.
We did tangible things also. I mean, remember, Jomo, we took over buildings for
Yes,
fighting
indeed.
for tuition hikes, right?
Yes, yes,
We,
yes.
we occupied President Hess' office for several weeks. Um, on the night we gave back the building, this Jewish student tried to criminalize us by stealing something, the teacher's salary binder. And luckily for us, he ran straight into the big belly of the head of security. Um, so, and when our party won the United Students League, we had a great coalition of every non-white ethnic group on the campus. So we were very multicultural. And we were open to white folks too, of good substance. You understand? It's not like if
Yes,
we were anti-white or anything like that. What
we
we
were not.
were pro-student, that
Yes,
students get a good education and affordable education. And obviously, student loans really kill a lot of people and still killing them now in the US. Billions of dollars that is owed, and Biden can't even get it to be removed as a debt for students here. So we did do a lot while we were on that campus, and we had the whole, obviously. I know when you and the president of the Black Students Union, the African American brothers, got together, you know, because traditionally in America, unfortunately, there was this rift between Caribbean and African Americans. Um, and some of those issues have been, for the most part, resolved. Um, So yes, it was some very progressive times, and so I took that into my law practice. Um,
I
I
don't want you to, I don't want you to get to your practice yet. I'll take you there. I
Mhm.
want you to stay a little bit more with me, to tell us when did you leave Trinidad and come to the United States?
That was in 1985.
1985. I came into the US in 83. And what did you went to, was your first degree was at Brooklyn College, right?
Yeah, my first degree was a degree in accounting. Number one goal was to be a CPA, a certified public accountant,
Right.
and then I did a master's in economics.
Right.
with a focus on international trade. I also I had 12 more credits for degree in computer science, and that has been very useful throughout my, business career because, technology is important and even more important now. And then I went to law school. I did my law degree in 2.5 years because I went to a liberal law school, Rutgers, Newark, New Jersey, but they were not liberal enough for me. So I decided, why not do 2 summers and get out of there early and come out here and practice law, you know. So, but over the years, we started several publications. The first publication we
Don't
started
go
was
there yet, Brian. Don't go there yet. Don't run ahead of me. Let me lead this. I'll take you to
okay.
everything you want to talk about. I
All
know
right.
your story. So let me lay out your story, and then we would get to the nature of your work now.
Mhm.
So you did so by 1990 you when did you graduate law school?
1990, the January of 95.
January 95. And you have been practicing everything. You set up a law firm, right? Which you still have. Tell us a little about your law firm.
Right. So I actually did 1 year in the district attorney's office. I worked in organized crime, major fraud. So there, I tightened my investigative abilities, and I didn't stay there for long because that fast track wasn't for me, and that environment wasn't for me. I wanted to, serve the community. So I started out my practice in 1996.
1996. And what are some of the areas that you specialize in? What are your core competencies?
Right. So what happens in the community is not necessarily what you want to do, but it's what you have to do. So there's a need in the community. And what was the need in the community? It was civil rights issues, it was immigration issues, matrimonial law, um, personal injury. Those were the top areas that I had to focus on early
Right.
because there was a huge demand. And then, um, you know, I had the luck of a friend of mine. Actually, I taught some courses at the Africana Studies Department at Brooklyn College, a course called Blacks Under Law. And one of the students there, Jovens, he's from Haiti but born in America. His family, he and Abner Luima's father came to my office in 1997. They said that Mr. Luima was sodomized at the 70th precinct in Brooklyn. And they wanted someone. He was under arrest. He was handcuffed to his bed. And their son needed help. So immediately, with Jovens was, I said, took my class, Blacks in the Law. He thought that obviously I would be helpful to the family. So they came to my office that morning, and I went straight to the Coney Island Hospital to see how I could help this brother, Abner Luima.
Right. That was a significant case, Brian. I remember us having being part of some very big demonstrations right outside the precinct, and
Yeah.
it is true that you were one of the principal persons in that action, that mass action, that resulted in the police being
Well,
arrested. There was a special investigation, then he was arrested and charged, and subsequently, I think he served like about 30 years in prison.
hmm And
But
also the
yes,
client got a $9 million settlement from the
yes, I'm quite aware of that. But it is significant, Brian, that you took
Mhm.
that bent early, that civil rights bent. What you think led you in that direction? I know you said that the community demanded it, but you didn't have to go there. You could have gone any other direction.
So there's love for your people. When a student comes to your office, someone that you taught with the father of a child that is wrongly accused, and they thought that they were going to kill his son at the hospital, the NYPD, which was possible. Um, Immediately, the mission was to obviously save his life,
Right.
but put this into the public so that the NYPD officers could not go even further with their, the crime that they committed.
Right.
Um,
Explain to us again what actually explain that case for us. I know it's all the way back in 1997,
right,
more than 31 years. What? Not 31, 27 years ago.
27 years ago. Yeah.
But Abner was arrested and then sodomized, right?
Right. So he was arrested. He gave a sucker punch, they say, to a police officer by the name of Justin Volpe. And Justin Volpe, um, when he took Louima with another officer to the 70th precinct, he used a plunger that he used to unchoke, obviously, a bathroom or what have you. And the wooden end of it, he took that and he penetrated his anus, and also it ruptured his intestine. So he was there at the precinct for quite some time before they got any kind of medical attention for him. And they obviously had him in handcuffs at the hospital. So the first order of business is to meet him, go get permission to see him with the family at the hospital. He was under guard. He was handcuffed to his bed. And the first order of business is, how do we get this gentleman out of this precarious situation? That 1 year that I spent at the district attorney's office, um, Charles J. Hines was the district attorney. We communicated with him because I had a line of communication through one of his senior um, assistant district attorneys, a black man, and Hines got on it immediately. That same day, the following day, I negotiated with the Daily News. The gentleman who did the article actually won a Pulitzer, the highest reward for anyone in the U.S. You know, writing articles. So I spoke with the New York Times. I told them that I would like them to write the article, but they have to guarantee me the front page. They say they can't guarantee a front page. I said, well, that's your bad luck. The Daily News, they said the same thing. Other publications, they say the same thing. But with a shake hand and a wink, I knew that the Daily News would front pages. And I didn't even need that because obviously Abner Louima's story warranted it. And so that came on the front page the following day. And from that, by the time we came out to the hospital the second or third day, we had 100 microphones in front of the hospital where, I gave an account of what had happened with the client.
Right.
And everything else. It just blew up internationally, locally, and
Right.
and what we call it was torture at the 70th precinct, because that was a torture.
Right. Would you say that that Abner Louima case, was instrumental in catapulting you to front and center of civil rights legal struggles in New York?
So what it did obviously was, it was it was a very outrageous situation. A lot of people don't live to tell the story. Luckily for Mr. Louima, we got there on time for him, so to speak. So yes, it was historic. Yes, we had And from the time it is historic, and from the time people know that there's going to be money for the client, other attorneys pay attention. One of them was the Cochran firm with, with Johnny
We're
Cochran.
talking about Johnny Cochran.
Yeah, Johnny Cochran, Cochran, Sheck, and Neufeld. Those are his two um, Jewish associates. Um, we tried to get him to dump his Jewish associates, but he was already, you know, in love with them. So the whole idea was let's transform this um, into a bigger law firm with
Right.
Cochran ourselves, and we actually, we got Cochran admitted in the federal court in New York City, the Eastern District. He and I were um, admitted the same time to the Eastern District. People were going for his autograph, and some lady asked me for mine, and I'm saying, my autograph? I thought that was funny, you know. I say, I'm not there yet, ma'am. The lady said, no, 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 your signature might be worth something in it.
Right, right.
But
But apart from that case, Brian, that
mhm.
Abner Louima case, are there other significant cases that you have done over the years that help to defend immigrant right, Caribbean people's rights in the United States of America?
One of the cases that we were on was the Burt Dugard case. And Burt Dugard was a fleeing felon. Burt Dugard had um, those print shop, because in those days, obviously, no big technologies yet. And the father gave him this business, and business wasn't too well. So he decided to do his first drug deal. He was transporting 2 kilos of cocaine, and from the top of Flatbush Avenue near Prospect Park, going towards Brooklyn College, he started to drive in that direction. Um, and a DEA agent followed. There was a pursuit. Um, the drug enforcement officer, Burt Dugard, what he did was at one time, well, the car crashed into a fire hydrant. He jumped out of his car and he started to run towards the projects. And there was a foot pursuit. And the drug enforcement agent plunged towards Mr. Dugard, brought him down, and there was a little scuffle in the road. And then Burt Dugard got up. He wasn't armed, and he started to run again. And I guess the officer was tired, and he jumped between, and the cars parked close together, so he had to jump over that little space there. And he was about at least 3 to 5 feet away, and the officer took the gun and shoot him in his back, and he bled to death in the road there. So you're not supposed to obviously murder a fleeing felon. The drug enforcement agent was indicted for manslaughter by Charles J. Hines, and Cochran showed up again. And I hired a pathologist as soon as, obviously, he was taken to the hospital. I hired a pathologist that worked on a plane that had crashed off of Long Island, and that about a couple of years before. So I told her that pathologist had good experience, and his report that he gave us said that he was shot 3 to 4 feet away, um, and so obviously he was shot in his back.
So how did that case end up? You said
Well,
he managed.
he was indicted by the
Right.
King County District Attorney's Office. So with the Louima case, he was indicted also by the Kings County District Attorney's Office, Hines, but we wanted it to go to federal court because it's the NYPD. So you may get justice in the federal system. And with the drug enforcement agent, I didn't want it to go to the federal system because
Right.
this is a federal officer we taken down, and we wanted the state Charles J. Hines to take him down. But again, Cochran came on, and for whatever reason, Cochran wasn't a good enough attorney to keep it in the state court, the district attorney's office there for Kings County, rather than it being transferred to federal court. And in federal court, the judge threw out the criminal conviction. So the officer, the drug enforcement agent, was never tried for manslaughter.
Was there a civil claim?
Well, once that was thrown out, you don't have much of a civil claim. So that was the intent, to bring that civil lawsuit afterward.
Right. After the trial, if that trial was successful.
Yeah.
But so in terms of in terms, who would you say is your greatest clientele? I know people from all over the Caribbean come to your firm on Court Street, but who would you say the more abundance of clients? Which Caribbean island, or which are they
Well, it
African
actually
Americans?
goes by population.
Excuse me?
By the same population. So the largest country in the Caribbean is Jamaica.
Jamaica.
So I have a lot of Jamaican clients, followed by TNT, followed by, it goes in the order of the populations.
Right.
And some of the smaller islands, unfortunately, they like to use what we call notaries. Notaries. You understand? So not only have I gone after, people who violate our civil rights, but people who violate our legal rights from an immigration perspective.
Right.
So I've gone after Nigerian attorney. His law firm was Salas and Associates. He actually sued us for slander, but he lost the case in Supreme Court. He wanted me to give him $5,000 because we said that he was a thief, so to speak, committing fraud. He was eventually disbarred, but not convicted in federal court. I believe most of the times, to be quite honest, from my experience in the district attorney's office, some of these attorneys, they are not too smart, to be quite honest. People think that white people are smart, and that's the furthest from the truth. They think that, black people, brown people only get a job because of affirmative action. That is not true. A lot of times our credentials are much better than them. And for whatever reason, their prosecution rate is not as good as it should be. And also you have to have the passion for your job too. So whether it be Salas and Associates, the gentleman from Nigeria, Ali Louison, he was from Grenada. I worked hard for about 2.5 years to get him indicted by the federal government on 12 counts of felony fraud against over 2,000 immigrants from Grenada, St. Vincent, even a couple white people he defrauded also. doing bogus applications under the Violence Against Women's Act. That's where you show that you're an abused
Both.
spouse
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
child, and he filed applications. People will sign blank, and he will put in his own facts, but not sign the application as being the preparer. And he would make up stories like a 2-year-old abusing the parents. And it was
Right.
like very, very ridiculous. But he made millions of dollars. I actually helped his wife to keep a house that she got from him that he wanted to take away from her. But,
So
but
he went to prison.
no, he actually died.
Oh,
He got a he was indicted and eventually got a heart attack and died.
wow. Brian,
Yeah.
listen,
And
a lot of people.
the most recent one we're doing is um, Wendella Sanders, a Jamaican woman. She has ripped off thousands of Jamaicans and other people from the Caribbean, filing fraudulent applications, sometimes not filing anything at all, and charging her fees were like 5,000, 10,000, 15,000. Um,
Yeah, I remember when I used to practice there. I remember there's a guy, this man who paid a gentleman, an attorney, $38,000 to do an application and still didn't get it.
yeah. So people are desperate to obviously
Yeah,
legalize
I know.
themselves.
Yeah.
So they
But
become
Brian,
vulnerable.
which of the areas, as an experienced immigration attorney,
Mhm.
are there areas in the law, either somebody who are living in any of these islands now who may be listening to us, or Caribbean people or people immigrants anywhere, that their legal avenues for them to apply and regularize their status? Because I know many people from across the region. Some of them are in America 10, 15, 20, some 25 years and still have not regularized their status. What are the kind of advice that you would give to somebody like that?
Well, anytime anyone comes to the US and they overstay their time by 1 day without getting an extension to their visitor's visa, by law, they no longer have a visa, it's cancelled. If they overstay by 6 months and they leave the US, they cannot return for 3 years. If they overstay by 1 year and they leave the US, they'll be subject to a 10-year ban. So
To a what?
a 10-year ban. So it's
10-year
either
ban.
3-year ban if you're more than 6 months and less than a year, or if you're
And
over
10,
a year, you're banned
10
for 10
years.
years.
Right.
So basically, they want people to overstay and they want people to be undocumented and they want people to have difficulty legalizing themselves in the United States because then these people will work in the underground economy. They could get a tax ID very easily because the Internal Revenue Services say we don't care if you're undocumented. If you work, pay taxes. And so people could get a tax ID. They could get a driver's license in New York City as an undocumented person based on New York state law. So people could actually survive with that tax ID and with that driver's license as identification. Because the underground economy, there are many, many jobs, whether it be babysitting, home health aides. In fact, some of the uh, home health aid companies, a lot of them owned by Jews. These people are millionaires. They roam our building at Court Street and they come to the office. They say, "Oh, Mr. Figure, you do real estate? Yeah. Any properties you have, we could buy cash." And that's from the labor, the exploitation of labor of immigrants who come to the US, whether they're from the Caribbean, Africa, Latin America. It's how they, you know, accumulate their wealth. Now, why are Caribbean people not starting a home health aid business, getting a license and hiring some of the same people from the Caribbean? So, one of the big issues that we have is that people in our community don't start businesses. So one of the organizations we formed was the New American Chamber of Commerce. Why? Because we saw a need for immigrants to open their restaurants, to open other businesses so that they could prosper here better in the U.S. Um, and that obviously is very important because you could come to the U.S. and you're undocumented and you could start a restaurant. You could start any business. It's so easy to come here, be undocumented, start a business.
But
And
the key that I want you to tell us though, how do
Mhm.
we get from being undocumented? What are some of the avenues we can use from
Right,
being undocumented to becoming documented? I remember
right,
when I was a teacher, for example, I used to encourage my students, look, get married to somebody who's documented as as a surefire way. But I am sure that there's some other um, areas in the law that has developed since I left the United States that you may be able to point to.
right. So President Clinton, with the Life Act of December 21st, 2000, basically he made it very difficult to legalize in the United States other than marriage to a U.S. citizen. So after December 21st, 2000, um, they had the 3-year bar, the 10-year bar. If you came to the country without inspection, that those are people coming across the border. Even if you're married to a U.S. citizen, you couldn't get a green card. Um, and once you overstay in the United States, you're disqualified from all parts to legalization, except if you're married to a U.S. citizen, it's the immediate relative category. Either a spouse could petition for you, or your child, 21 years or older, U.S. citizen, could petition for you, or a parent could petition for a child that is under 21. That was the only path to legalization once you overstay your time in the U.S. So job petitions, every other category you cannot do. Your brother sister petitions, you cannot do it because you'll have to go back home to get it. And eventually, once Obama took office, he introduced something called a provisional waiver. And this provisional waiver allowed people who came to the US without inspection, because there was a growing number of people who could never legalize in the United States. So he designed provisional waivers for people who came to the US without inspection, where they could go back to their home countries after we processed that waiver for them to get their green card in the countries of their origin. But there are probably 100, 200,000 people or more who actually qualified for the provisional waiver, but because of just fear, they don't want to go back to Barbados or
Right.
Jamaica to get their green cards. And it takes a lot of psychological counseling to convince people, look, don't worry about it. You don't have a criminal record. You're pre-approved with this provisional waiver. Look at it as a 2-3 week vacation when you go home before they process your green card.
And how long would it take if somebody were to be living in the United States for some time and and who makes the application on Obama's provisional waiver?
Well, it would be the lawyer processing the
No, no,
guy.
no, 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 no. What I mean, not. I don't mean in that sense. I mean,
It will be the
so,
spouse on behalf of the U.S. citizen spouse on behalf of
oh,
his.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
So if you overstayed your time
hmm
based on the Obama provisional waiver law, a spouse can make an application for you, but you would have to leave.
But those are for people who came without inspection. Those who came with inspection could get it in the U.S.
Ah,
Now,
okay. But
now
so if
two
you came
countries,
over from Canada, without inspection,
right?
then you are eligible for the provisional waiver.
Correct. Which is a
And
lot of Vincentians, Grenadians, a lot of countries that used to get visas to Canada.
right,
Their ultimate goal wasn't Canada. It was, let's go to Canada and
and then
come
come over.
across the border. Now, for some of the people coming across the border, um, if the client explains to me, the attorney, that they were waived in, that's considered a legal entry. And we'll have to do a proper affidavit with the application where they didn't need a provisional waiver.
Right.
So a lot of people, over the years, everybody's in a car, and the customs people have so many people to check at the border. They call
The
the
way
cars, they look inside, and they wave you in.
the way you through.
Right, they wave you through, right. So, so that's actually considered a legal entry based on a immigration court case decided in 2014. You
Right.
understand?
Yes.
But for those who came with inspection, with a visitor's visa from the respective consulates throughout the Caribbean, they don't have that problem if they are married to a U.S. citizen, or if they are a parent of a child that is 21 years or older, a U.S. citizen. So those are considered immediate relative
Right.
categories.
In
So,
Canada,
uh-huh.
in Canada, I know sometimes people can get in because there are deficiencies in the workforce. So kind of want to fill certain deficiencies. Do you
Mhm.
have a similar situation in the United States where, let's say, nurses can get in on special visas and so on and so forth?
So one of the areas a lot of people come in, especially from Jamaica, I know they recruit from other Caribbean islands, is the H-2B visas. So those are for people who normally work at the Disney World, um, Universal Parks, Six Flags, and for people who work in the hotel industry.
Right.
So those are for unskilled labor. A lot of hotels in the south, they look for these H-2B workers.
Right.
Most times they go to Jamaica and recruit, but they sometimes go to other islands. And someone here in the US could actually get their license as a recruiter so that they could go and, recruit different people. So the H-2B visa, it's the people work on the cruise liners also, the H-2B. With the H-2B, you could recruit, the employer could recruit in any country that they want to. So if they want white people, they could do Sweden. If they want black people, they could do Jamaica or wherever. You understand? And
Yes.
that's one of the categories that is very lenient, so to speak. But the
Right.
quota is just about 50,000 people a year. But the U.S. labor market needs more. And sometimes how they violate workers' rights if someone comes to the U.S. as a H-2B and they're a hotel worker in the South, the workload that they give is per room, clean X rooms per hour.
Right. So
And they know
you no longer work by the day.
no, because they're trying to violate labor laws where to do that job, you cannot do it in 8 hours. You need probably, let's say, 9, 12 hours, but you're not being paid overtime.
Right.
Or you have to clean those or rooms fast, or leave some of them kind of
Yes, I've
untidy.
heard a similar thing happening on the cruise liners now.
Yeah, that's the experience also with the cruise liner. So that's a good entry level for people, obviously, that are on skilled labor, and a lot of people grab that opportunity. It's normally for a 6 year period, or do a 3 years, and then you could do another 3 years. But a lot of people leave the job within a year or two because it's brutal. The work hours are hard,
Right.
and they could probably get jobs other places with the social number that they have to
Right.
work other places. But yes, they violated their contract, but there's no bars to
So
take another job.
do you find, Brian, that
Mhm.
immigration work is as busy as, let's say, 15, 20 years ago? Or um the work as an immigration attorney is becoming more less so?
Well, It fluctuates. So with all the people coming across the border, almost every Caribbean island, people are seeking political asylum. Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, all of the islands. So
Political asylum.
it's not only Venezuelans coming across the border; it's also Caribbean people.
What
You
is the
understand?
basis? What are the basis that some of them are making political asylum applications?
Well, they don't. A lot of them don't really have a basis. Okay, so people from Jamaica may claim what, that they're homosexual. You understand? And
Mm-hmm.
that the government there is persecuting and not doing anything to people to help people who are homosexuals.
Right.
A lot of people are fleeing violence.
Mm-hmm.
The criminal justice system doesn't seem to work in most Caribbean countries. TNT has a lot of violence. So you have
Mm-hmm.
people coming in. And the violence in the Caribbean is partly to be blamed by the people with PhDs in crime that were um, deported from the United States of America. So a lot of the people who were deported throughout the Caribbean uh, were people who actually gun violence was the core of all of this. So how the Caribbean dealt with it, obviously, they can't even help the people. They are far less than the people they send back from the United States of America, who are real professionals in terms of how they operate. Some of them may be Crips and Bloods. So even though, you know, they are undocumented, they're still part of the various gangs that exist in New York City that could be very brutal. And they all prey on people of color. They never prey on the white community.
What about if somebody, let's say you are living in the United States and you have a love affair with somebody on the islands, could that person come in, or could you come to the Caribbean, marry that person, and in short order allow that person to come in as an immigrant and get the status?
Well, you don't have to marry them. You could bring them on a fiance visa. So whether you
Right.
marry them or you bring them on a fiance visa, the time difference for bringing them to the US is about the same.
What's
With
the
the
time difference? What's the time?
I would say 6 to 9 months.
Right. I remember when I practiced it used to be like about 6 months. The
Yeah,
person has to come in
but
in
it's
about
a
six
little
months.
longer now because of the people coming across the border. So whether it be, because a lot of people are falling in love online, they don't need to go anywhere, technology wise. So all you have to do is obviously document that relationship properly. And depending on the country that they're in, if it's Africa, those applications take a very long time. And if those countries don't have diplomatic relationships with the US, then obviously that's another issue. So the Caribbean, without those nuances, will probably be faster with those fiancé visas, where you may have met physically or not. People fall in love online also. That's the new technology. And if someone visits the Caribbean and they get married to someone, we could also do that petition and have them in the US within 6 to 9 months. Um, yeah. So the
But
American government, and marriages do have a quota, and that's another thing. So um, there's no long waiting periods when you're an immediate relative, whether it be
because
right, whether it be
the law allows for the
keeping
quick
family. Yeah.
unification of families.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously that's the rights of the U.S. citizen, not
Right.
obviously the immigrant.
Right. What about so the waiting period now? Let's say a brother is sponsoring his sister. I remember in
Oh,
the old days it used to be like that wait used to be like about 10 years. Has
well,
that changed?
you could add 2 years to that now.
So it's about 12 years.
12 years, but if you're from China or India or the Philippines, it's 25 years.
Rotted.
Yes.
Why is that? Why is that? It's so extensive.
Because of the number of people petitioning for those relatives.
Uh-huh.
So it's a
25.
quota system, yeah. So 25 years for those countries, for the Caribbean and much of the rest of the world, it's 12 years. Obviously, petitions for your children under 21, that's what they should do as quickly as possible. So one of the big issues though is, and we have an article in our publication, the Immigrants Journal. People could look at that online.
Yeah, I'll get to the journals.
Yeah.
I'll get to your journalistic work in a while.
Yeah, we have a lot of very good articles. One of them we did recently was on the psychological impact on children. So, the mother may come here with the kids or the father or both of them, and they know as parents that the only way that they could get a green card for their kids is if they marry to a U.S. citizen.
Right.
So, unfortunately, it may mean that a happy marriage they have to divorce in order for one of the parents to marry a U.S. citizen before those children's 18 birthdays so that the parent could petition for those kids. So those type of decisions are very difficult, especially you have people who are very religious coming from the Caribbean to the U.S.
Right.
and um, and not only that, sometimes obviously parents not putting a premium, so to speak, to making their kids legalized before they graduate from high school so that they could get to go to college, they could get, financial aid and other benefits for going to college. Yeah. So that's a um, that's a huge issue. And these kids unfortunately develop a resentment. Why did you bring me to America? Why did you bring me to America so long ago? And you never did anything so that I could get a green card, so that when I'm ready for college, I could actually attend college. And even though undocumented people could go to college, obviously they don't qualify for financial aid. And
Right.
within the University of New York, if you are one of those people, you cannot take one of the most popular degrees, which is a degree to be a registered nurse. So a lot of times the path to wealth for people from the Caribbean here is becoming registered nurses. They could earn six figures. They could do a double shift and make 150, $200,000 a year. They could purchase a home. But so that registered nursing degree is very important. And to get a license as a registered nurse, you have to be a green card holder or a citizen. So sometimes these kids who may want to be registered nurses, even though they're allowed to go to college, they're not allowed to study those degrees.
Right. Here's a question for you, Brian. How does the new policy in place that talks about keeping family together? Well, that's not a new law, and that has been a law that's been in fact since 1965 with the new immigration law. But what impact does it have on people from the Caribbean? This whole notion of keeping families together.
Well, the law is not really constructed to keep the family together. If the definition of a family is husband, wife, and kids, who could petition for those parents? You understand? Maybe okay, a U.S. citizen parent, then the parents will qualify over several years. They'll have to go back to their home countries to get a green card, but that doesn't include, you know, um, that doesn't take into account the time period and the waivers that is needed and the aging out of children. So, um, so basically, it's more advantageous for people who come to the U.S. who are single in terms of the philosophy of, when you're starting a new family. But most 9 out of 10 times, if a married couple come to the U.S. and we talk about married people, they'll have to get a divorce in order to legalize.
Because one of them want to end up marrying to an American citizen so that they can regularize their
Yeah.
status.
And not only that, to help their children.
Right.
So the burning issue is, okay, how about my kids?
What about if the child comes in first and then wants to bring in their parents?
Well, they could bring in their parents later on, but they still have to gain status. And
I understand that. So the child
but
comes in.
Yeah, but the child,
Let's say
the only way for legalization for the child is if they are married to a U.S. citizen.
Right. But once they're married to a U.S. citizen, if they decide they want to make an application for the parent, how long would such an application take?
Right, so they have to be U.S. citizens, and if they're married to a U.S. citizen, when they get their green card, after 2 years, 9 months having that green card, they could apply for citizenship, and then they could petition for their parents.
So after 2 years and 9 months, I thought it used to be 5 years.
No, that is 4 years, 9 months if you got your green card from a non-U.S. citizen. But if you got married to a U.S. citizen, it's the requirement is 2 years, 9 months for that.
I see. So once you're married to a U.S. citizen, the time is literally cut in half.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
So
but is that information known by a lot of people? Because is that a recent change?
No. It's not recent.
That has been so for a long time.
Yeah. Oh. And most people, through our publications, through consultations, through gossip in the community, obviously, people know, and sometimes even before they come to the U.S., they understand.
Right. Well, that's why programs like these are important, because somebody may be listening here in St. Vincent and may come in and tell their friends in Barbados that, look, after 2 years and 9 months, you could apply if you are.
Yeah. As soon as you qualify, you should put in that application for your citizenship, And not only that, we look at people becoming citizens, and then, so if parents become a citizen before their children's 18th birthday, the child is automatically a U.S. citizen. That's called derivative citizenship.
Right.
But sometimes people are derivative citizens. So the Life Act of December 2001 said, look, if one parent is a U.S. citizen, all children at the time that parent becomes a citizen is automatically a citizen.
If you're under 18.
If you're under 18, yeah. So you must have the green card, but once your mother or your father become a citizen, it doesn't have to be both parents.
I see.
So one of the issues that we have seen when we do a lot of deportation cases, people shouldn't, when they do the pleadings, they shouldn't say that they are not a U.S. citizen if they're not sure. So, and that's because of the concept of derivative citizenship. So there's rules before December 21st, 2001, where both parents may have to be a citizen in order for you to gain citizenship. If the child is a bastard, according to Grenadian, Vincentian, Trinidadian, English, or whatever country in the world law, that has a factor, part of it. That's the old traditional Western thing about marriage out of wedlock. So that becomes a little more complicated. But we have found.
But how does that play out, Brian? In a country like St. Vincent and the Grenadines, here, we no longer recognize the distinction between legitimate and illegitimate children. All children are equally valid before the law. How does that play out?
What year?
Huh?
As of what year?
Since about 1986.
Okay. So it means that they still have to go backwards after 1986.
You have to do what?
So the 86 law wasn't retroactive.
No. It kicked in when it was passed in 1986.
But not retroactively.
No, it was not.
All right. So the retroactive people, we have to look at one rule, and then the people after 86, there's a different rule.
But the question I'm asking, so for somebody who, even if their parents were not married, how does that impact their application for a U.S. visa or for U.S. status.
Right. So part of the requirements would be what they're looking at is whether or not there's legitimacy and whether or not one parent or both parents was required to be a U.S. citizen for that child to have derivative citizenship.
Right.
So there's at the USCIS, there's a whole PDF file that deals with those type of issues, and it gets a little complicated, But obviously, it's an important document for attorneys to review when they do deportation cases with their clients. And some attorneys are not seasoned, so that what happens is some people who are actually U.S. citizens are deported. So most recently, we had two cases, we think, where one actually served in the U.S. military, had an honorable discharge, was a derivative citizen, and was deported to TNT. And then we have another one who wasn't in the armed forces, but maybe a derivative citizen also.
Right.
So what we have to do is reclaim citizenship for them. They'll be issued a passport to the U.S. consulate in whichever country, and then they could return to the United States.
Right. If you were to advise a young person now, young Caribbean person, young immigrant, as to what area of endeavor they should pursue, what might that be?
From an educational point of view. Well,
Educational, yeah.
right. In order to be accepted in a college here, you must have 5 CXC or O level, whether you had in the past. So
Right.
that is equivalent to a high school diploma in the US. So you could start college immediately with that.
Right.
In the Caribbean, you have to take A levels before you go to a university, but you don't have to do that in the US. And it may be a good idea to forget about those A levels and just go straight to college in the US if you have that opportunity, because you save 2 years of your life. Now, if you decide to go to the University of the West Indies, and I assume it's a free education, correct?
No, it's not. It's free in Trinidad, but not a Vincentian person who wants to go to UE has to pay.
So they should go Trinidad.
Grenadian.
So they should go Trinidad and become a Trinidad citizen.
Well,
Step one. I don't know. You understand? But obviously, any government in the Caribbean, I don't care which country, and I'm not talking politics, they should be giving young people a free education up to university level. The other thing would be there's visible trade and invisible trade. Invisible trade means you're going to export your people. One of the countries in the Caribbean that has no exchange control for US dollars is Jamaica. And it's for 2 reasons. One, remittances, which is more than tourism. So Jamaica gets over 10, 12 billion US dollars a year from Jamaicans living in the United States, sending back money to their families.
12 billion.
Yeah, that's the range, 10, 12 billion a year. Then it is tourism. So Jamaica, that's their 2 main exports. Their people and tourism, people coming to Jamaica. And part of that tourism is people who are actually from Jamaica visiting Jamaica for their vacations. The other would be obviously all the people from Jamaica who want to build a house in Jamaica. I've never met a Jamaican in the United States that doesn't own a house back in Jamaica. And what they do, they get loans or they save their money and they build. So that helps the construction industry in Jamaica. So remittances, the government has those US dollars to buy other products, services that they may need from other countries, because you need obviously US dollars to pay for your goods and services.
Right.
So any economist in the Caribbean that is not advising the prime minister or whomever in the entire Caribbean about invisible trade exporting their people is not a well-trained economist. Also, whether the Caribbean like it or not, the Caribbean is right next to the United States of America and Canada. What the University of the West Indies should be focusing on throughout the Caribbean is, yes, providing education for people within the economy in St. Vincent or Trinidad or what have you, but they should be thinking about educating their people who, when they come here, they could get top paying jobs. And if you go to any hospital in New York City or any hospital throughout the US, you see Filipinos. Every Filipino leaving the Philippines, coming to the US, know that if they get an education, and there's several universities in the Philippines that give degrees on registered nursing. So if you take so once you come to the US, all you're doing is the nursing exams within 3 months, and you're a qualified registered nurse, and you're getting a lot of money. So what is the jobs that are in demand in the US? Carpentries, carpenters, plumbers, welders, the trades, because America is always building. So all the young men in throughout the Caribbean, if they eventually end up here, whether legally through a visa or running across the border, those are the jobs that going to be giving them six figures.
Right.
So all countries in the Caribbean know that their unemployment rate is very high. But this arrogance about people leaving the country and coming to the US must end. It is not a policy that is friendly to the citizens of those various countries. You understand? So,
When I had a
mhm,
conversation with you about 3 weeks ago when I passed through New York, and one of the points that you were making, you said that you think that Caribbean, the principals at the University of the West Indies should consider opening a branch of the University of the West Indies in New York. Why you think that is important?
well, first to begin, all of Western Europe does that. I mean, you could open a branch here in the US, but you obviously have to go by US rules. Um, and American universities open branches in the Caribbean. In Grenada, they have that medical school from the US.
It's in George's University.
And I think,
It's a full-fledged university now, not just medical school.
right. And they also introducing nursing programs, my understanding is. So if I was somebody in St. Vincent, I want to become a millionaire, I would go and get a registered nursing degree in Grenada and hopefully plan to come to the US at some time
Well,
where,
actually, in St. Vincent, the government, to its credit, over the last 20 years or so, has had a very vigorous nursing training program. In fact, it has trained more nurses than we can use.
right,
And one of the things that has happened in the last few years, particularly after COVID, a
mhm,
lot of the nurses who were trained, in fact, the government paid the young women to become trained as nurses.
mhm,
And a lot of them who have been trained have left. They went to Cayman, they went to Bermuda, they went to BVI, many of them went to England, and others went to the United States. So I was talking to a nurse who came to consult with me last week, and she says that we are now experiencing a shortage because so many of our trained nurses have left St. Vincent to go to greener pastures. So the point you are making is an important point, which this government has recognized and has tried to plug that hole by training, not only training nurses, because when they got in 2001, there was a shortage of nurses, and the government tried to address that problem by really developing the nursing schools and training nurses. So a lot of our women, uh, and mainly women go to nursing schools, a lot of them end up doing fairly well um, um, at and making fairly good salaries, whether
right.
it's across the Caribbean or in North America or England.
Yeah. And that's the best way to liberate a woman when she's financially independent. You understand? They have more confidence in themselves when they don't have to be asking the husband or whatever for money, you know. So when they
Yeah.
talk about women's rights and all of these things, the best way you could help women is by educating them and putting them at a different level. And then what they could do is give IOUs. People could probably go to school, and then in the future they could pay off loans. They have to be creative how, you know.
Yeah.
But investing in education is extremely, extremely important.
You earlier you mentioned something called the Immigrant Journal. Tell us a little about the Immigrant Journal and your own involvement with it.
So that was the first publication that we started, and that was in 1998.
Is it still being published?
Yeah, I mean, we do print every so often, but we mostly online. The publication deals with immigration issues from uh, educational point of view, moving from documented to undocumented, but it also deals with the political aspects of immigration law, um, and the history of immigration in the United States of America. So it is important that people understand why the US government, whether the Democrat or Republican, are hostile to immigrants. Obviously, it goes to the US history of, um, you know, misrepresenting, civil rights and all the laws and all the trials and tribulations that African Americans faced when they came to this country. And it also shows how it mirrors itself in US immigration policy.
Right.
So
Which of the, which of the
under the
governments?
visa under the visa waiver program, if you're Western European, you don't need a visa to come to the US. So you could be eating out of a garbage can in England. You don't need a visa to come here. And you could be a rich guy in St. Vincent. You need a visa to come to the US.
Right.
And the visa waiver program, people overstay their time also, and they integrate in the system.
So
So,
are you?
so there are a lot of undocumented people who are part of that visa waiver program, but it continues. So we have stories like that comparing different types of undocumented people. And one of the groups that they obviously don't talk about is people from Europe who come here under the visa waiver program. So you don't hear top Republicans or whoever saying, look, from my country, from what, Ireland or wherever his ancestors are from, they could come here to the US without a visa. They don't have to worry about running across the Mexican border, the Canadian border, because they could, as I said, be eaten out of a trash
Right,
can
right.
in Ireland.
Which is such an amazing story, considering that if you
Mm,
take that the US has such an aggressive policy towards Mexico,
right.
and in 1845, the US essentially stole Texas, New Mexico,
That's
California, Nevada from Mexico. And it
true.
seems to me that the
Mhm.
Mexican government should demand that Mexicans get a chance to come in at least to those southern states, because such a huge chunk of the United States Southwest,
Right.
less than 200 years ago, were part of the Republic of Mexico.
Well, yeah, I mean, who have the biggest gun with the most bullets win. It's not about
True.
international law. It is not about human rights. It's not about God and his teachings. So people have different ideas about what is right and what is wrong from different, different philosophies. So the Republican Party, they monopolize Christianity. They are the biggest Christians in the world. But yet still the Bible have many verses that say be kind to immigrants, written by Catholic scholars. That's one of the articles that we have on the on the journal website, quoting all the verses of the King James Bible. where God said to be kind to immigrants. And what are they teaching in these churches in the South? I mean, so if you're a person of God and you call yourself a Christian, what is your justification from a religious point of view?
Yeah.
And what are the priest, pastor, whatever teaching in these institutions? You understand?
Right.
So
You, you
yeah.
have been you have been an immigration attorney for some time now, which and you have practiced through numerous administrations. Which of
Mhm.
them you say of the American government administrations that you lived through and practiced through, which of them you would say was is most hospitable to immigrants?
So the last amnesty in America was under Ronald Reagan, which we didn't like him, right?
You
And
ask
that
what?
was January 1st, 1982 was the last immigration amnesty in the United States.
That was
And
Reagan.
that amnesty was given by Ronald Reagan.
That's
Um,
42 years ago.
yeah, that was even before we went to law school, right?
Yeah.
But he did that amnesty. Um, After him, they had the Bushes. Um, they were never really hostile by today's standard towards immigrants, but they were. Clinton, um, he passed the Life Act. He got rid of a law called 245I that would have solved all the problems. Presidente Fox of Mexico said the best, legislation that they could ever pass in the United States of America to help immigrants, which is true, is to reinstate 245I. That's a law where you paid $1,000 penalty to immigration, and all the immigration categories would remain open to you by paying this $1,000 penalty. That law expired April 30th, 2001, under Clinton's life back. I do not know why he allowed this law and didn't fight for it to be reinstated. Immigration at the time was called the INS, Immigration Naturalization Services, and they said that the US government shouldn't allow that law to expire. It should continue. And they said every year they raise $300 million in revenue, and that money was used obviously to make America secure. And that April 30th, 2001, it expires September 11th, 2001. The jets were going to the Trade Center.
Right.
Uh, so Christians would say God do like ugly. I don't know. But so under Obama, he's trying to recuperate. So he did the provisional waivers, which were very important. Um, and and that was in his tenure between 2008 and 2016. Trump was one of the anti-immigrant 2016 going into 2020, and then Biden 2020 2024. This year uh, he passed a law, an executive order, where he expanded President Obama's provisional waiver. So anyone who was married before June 17th of 2024, they didn't have to, we still process the provisional waiver, but instead of going back to your home country, you could get that green card right here in the United States. It's called parole in place. And recently, a federal court in Texas, put a freeze on it because there's a lawsuit against Biden with this executive order. And immigration is still accepting this parole in place applications. They just cannot make a final decision until that that case is resolved in the Court of Appeals.
A lot
So,
of
mhm,
a lot of Caribbean women
mhm.
over the last 10, 15 years or so have made the decision, rather astute decision, I would say, to when they are pregnant, they come to the United States to deliver their babies.
Anchor baby,
So
that's a good idea. But that child cannot petition for the parents until that child is 21. If the
until the
parent,
child becomes 21.
right, if the parent travels with that child, immigration will want to know whether or not that child is an anchor baby and how did you pay for the delivery and medical
The medical
services.
services.
Yeah, so they could actually cancel your visitor's visa. Um, and so what I tell people from the Caribbean, they shouldn't be coming into the U.S. through Florida or Texas, gone straight to New York City, the more liberal places where the immigration officers may be a little more lenient
Lenient.
or humane. Um, Even for regular people, they give these red states, they give a lot of people trouble when they come through the airports. Obviously, they want to know how long you're going to be here, how long is your vacation, how are you going to pay for your vacation? So they get into your business a lot, you know. Um, when I came to the US and I was going to study, the immigration officer asked me if I can't go to school in Trinidad and Tobago. Tell them no because we still swing on vines on the, through the mango trees, and the only place I could find a university is in America. I was just fucking with his head, so to speak, you know. So, but that has been me throughout my life because I started my life as a union person fighting for workers' rights in TNT when I worked with Barclays Bank, and we used to call it the blood bank that's sucking we. You understand? So that was a good introduction to life itself. Um, so yeah. So um, Anchor baby, yeah, but that takes 21 years before that child could petition for you.
Yeah, but 21 years, sometimes they like a child that goes by. I know a number
It goes
young.
through very quickly. But that not
Uh,
only that, that child now has free university in the future.
exactly. So the child can come into the United States, live for a year, and apply for all of the benefits and so on. Also,
Yeah, because my brother's girlfriend had a child 18 years ago, and she's in my office. She'll be 18 soon, and she's a Anka baby, and she'll be going to Brooklyn College, and I'm guiding her through the process, and she works in my office now. You understand?
nice, nice. Yeah.
So you see what an Anka baby did for my brother's child. You understand what I'm saying?
Right, right, right.
So she could go to university for free, get the various grants. Um, I'm looking to see how she could qualify under the financial aid as a emancipated minor.
Right.
So she could get even more grants. And I told her she was doing A levels. I told her that she wasted 2 years of her life, and she agrees with me.
Yeah.
But
That's a conversation that we have had down here
mhm,
because, interestingly, excuse me, a lot of our students still go to a lot of our students still go to the University of the West Indies, and we
mhm,
have a community college here that essentially trains people
mhm.
to go off to university. So in 2 years they may do
For
three
higher
or four
education.
subjects,
Right.
and I have long felt that was a waste of 2 years,
A levels.
considering what can happen if you were to go directly into American university. But I spoke to a friend recently who says that in England, you still the British colleges and universities, well, British universities still require at least 3 A level as a benchmark for entry.
Right. So that I mean, you could look at it two ways. One, the requirement of an A level is really not to make you better prepared for a university. It is to keep people out of university.
How so?
Well, how many parents could afford that their children keep going to school beyond the O level, CXC? You understand? What's the justification for the A level other than being the requirement to enter a university?
Well, I can tell you here in St. Vincent, most of the students who wants to go on to A level get a chance to go. Got
But that
the A
is
level,
fine. But then
the A
they
level.
remain. The whole idea is you're keeping them out of the labor force. You understand? So the A level, there's different justifications for it, but are those justifications in the best interest of the person, or is it in the best interest of the government? Because they cannot provide jobs. So the longer they keep people in school, is the less jobs that they have to provide in. And then when they get the A levels, all right, not all people at A levels go on to universities.
That's correct.
And so what they did again is delay 2 years of being in the workforce, earning money for their families that might be in need. And for people who live in poverty, that's obviously not in their best interest. Um, and again, if the education is a more bourgeois academic kind of degree, let's all these scholars kind of thing, as opposed to the trades, that's another issue, especially for men. So exporting workers to the rest of the Caribbean, to other countries, the best export opportunity Caribbean countries have is their human resource. They invest with them and they think about parts and they work with recruitment agencies throughout the US, England, Western Europe, and try to build partnerships with these organizations so that they could absorb those people that the country has trained into their labor force,
Right.
where there's obviously a need for labor. And I think that approach at a prime minister, the higher government level is important because, um, you know, you have to give people opportunities. And for those without wealth, accumulated wealth, the only thing that they have is getting an education. So I didn't inherit anything from my parents. I didn't have, um, you know, it wasn't necessary for my parents to do wills, trust, and estate planning. That's one of the things that we
You
did.
didn't. You were not born with a silver spoon in your mouth.
I wasn't born with a silver spoon.
But if you want to if you would think, I mean, students do formal education, sociology, economics, accounting, but there's an emphasis in Europe, a lot of technical training, emphasis in Europe for the machine trades and so on that we don't see as
But
often.
that's what the Caribbean must have also, because I talk about the trade, I talk about the
Right,
plumbers,
but
the carpenters, the electricians, you understand? The architects, different. So again, all the US government, sorry, all the Caribbean governments have to do is to go to the US Department of Labor website and they have statistics on the top jobs in a demand in America. So
right.
there are jobs that require a 2 year degree. Anesthesiologists, I think that's what they call it in the hospitals. They make a lot of money. A 2 year degree. Why not
Yeah,
train people for that labor shortage?
right.
So the labor department in any country in the Caribbean, that's what, whether it be the US, whether it be England, whether it be France, whether it be whoever the government has um, relationships with, you understand? Um, and they have to get into these sciences. And if any government in the Caribbean is not exposing their citizenship to AI technology, that's a huge mistake. Huge, huge mistake. So AI technology is unbelievable. Um,
Unbelievable in what sense?
from the sense of research, from the sense of preparation, and it's not just another talking law, talking in all areas that you could think about. You could actually get a better education of AI technology, a focused one than you could probably get in the classroom. Because if the professors, the teachers are not keeping abreast of AI technology, then something is wrong. In for the various databases, it's about $20 a month for Chat GPT. People should visit the Chat GPT website, and people should look at some of the analysis that they have on the various islands in the Caribbean. But for people, yeah, and it could help people start businesses, understand, just like YouTube has done in terms of being the biggest, most resourceful, online asset in the world. Um, a lot of kids, they just go to YouTube and they get not only their entertainment but their knowledge. Now, it's not obviously always the best, but um, the children of today are growing up faster than the ones of yesterday.
In a few months, Brian, you
Mhm.
you guys are going to have presidential elections. And go enter your crystal ball and tell us what you see.
Um, it could be what you hope for and what is going to happen.
I'm not asking you what you hope for. I'm asking you what
So
you
first
see.
to begin, I don't vote because I'm not in a battleground state. So most people either live in a state that
What
is
do you
red
mean? Well,
or blue.
well, when you say you're not in a battleground state, explain the whole concept of the battleground state.
Well, everyone in New York City, the Democrats always win in New York City,
Right.
for the most part, or in New York State. They always carry New York, California, and the red states is like Texas and Florida. And then the battleground states are states where it's 50-50. And in those
So that's
states, they
like
have,
that's like Florida, Pennsylvania,
no, not
Wisconsin.
Florida. Florida is a red state.
Not
Pennsylvania,
Florida. I
no,
mean
not
Pennsylvania,
Michigan,
Indiana,
Wisconsin,
Wisconsin,
not Indiana.
Ohio,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So there are about five states that actually will decide who's the president of the United States of America. And those states have a lot of uneducated people, black or white. And that lack of education historically, in terms of American history and other important issues, current affairs, what have you, these people are easily convinced to vote against their best interests. So when President Barack Obama talked about Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, people were dying in certain red states that they decided it's better to die and apply for the Affordable Care Act that Barack Obama made available to them, which is crazy, right? Die because I don't like Obama, the Affordable Care Act, but people actually made decisions like that. So that's what KKK, Russia, and Trump has focused on. Kamala has changed a lot of her quote unquote liberal views to middle of the line views. Um, so, and that's obviously a big issue. So the people who always have to compromise is the people with the most principles.
The people with the most what?
Principles. So people of, good moral character, people of, whether it be from an education, whether it be the love of God, but so so most likely, I think Trump is going to win, to be quite honest, and a lot depends on the debate that they have tomorrow. Um, but people do vote against what is in their best interest.
I spoke to a good colleague of mine earlier today, who says that he thinks that Trump, that Kamala Harris is going to win because it's not so much people want to vote for her. They're just a little tired of Trump. Do you detect that in the American body politic, that people are tired of Trump?
Well, that has a certain degree, but to be quite honest, um, most of the people in the battleground states are not educated people. So they make decisions based on hate. They don't make decisions based on political calculations as to what would be the best for the economy, what will be best for America moving forward, a country that would be the majority minority will be blacks, Asians, and Latinos in 2050. So we are talking about people who lack the ability to reason. And part of that, obviously, I think people need to do. I think one of the requirements in schools and all over the world is that people need to do calculus 1, calculus 2, calculus 3. Mathematics is important for developing logic. You know, it trains your brain in a particular way how to think. People taking shortcuts where an education is concerned. People are more on focus, not on a general degree, but on a like training for a particular job, and that is becoming more and more prominent. So people's ability to reason, I don't think, you know, um, the Church of Scientology in America say that only smart people should vote.
The
But
Church
what
of
is the
Scientology.
belief? Yeah, but that's
I didn't hear what you
that,
said. The Church of Scientology says what?
yeah, say that only smart people should be able to vote.
Only smart people should be able to vote.
Yeah, it's just stupid people can make obviously good decisions. Obviously,
Well, but there's
yeah.
that's an issue though, because
Hmm.
the Martinican revolutionary psychiatrist Franz
Hmm.
Fanon said that the ordinary people can understand the most complex issues if those who are imparting that knowledge really want them to understand. I
Okay,
believe
so the
that.
ability to impart with knowledge means that the person is a teacher. We have too
Yes,
many people that lecture and don't teach. So you have
true.
to, a teacher has to be qualified to teach it. In that, do they have the ability to part with knowledge? And a lot of teachers do not have that ability, the ability to part with knowledge.
Right.
And that is the huge issue in America. Are these people racist or are they stupid? And I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that they are stupid and not racist. But um, the decisions that they make is racist decisions, not stupid.
Brian, at the top of the program, you mentioned that you have three young boys. I think you said 14, 12, and 8. Are you
Yeah, 14,
optimistic?
13, 12. Huh?
Are you optimistic for the country that you are leaving them? Are you optimistic that you have prepared a place, you have prepared help to build a country that they can feel comfortable growing up in?
Well, I'm only concerned about Kings County. I cannot be concerned about the rest of America. Um, so you have to, you know, charity begins at home. What am I going to prepare them for? I have to obviously um, help them to not only to gain knowledge, but to have the ability to really analyze, critical thinking. Don't trust anyone from an educational point of view. Always look at what the source of the information, where the source information is coming from. Um, But I think the young people of today, um, they will do a million times better than us in a shorter period of time. Um, but you're always obviously concerned as a parent that you know they'll always be like your little babies. You want to protect them, what have you. So you have to try to prepare them when you're not around. Um, but yeah, people are still having kids and people are still investing in the future. Obviously, the biggest issue that you spoke about is climate issues. Um, and the other, obviously, a nuclear war. If there was to be a nuclear war, it would have happened already.
You think
Um,
it would have happened already?
yeah. Um, you know, Russia knows what is going on. They obviously have their secret conversations with the U.S. government, and I'm sure they have told the U.S. government, "Don't cross this line." And
But they have been saying that for the longest while. Don't cross. Well, the Americans said they wouldn't cross certain lines, and that's the point of my column last week. I was making the point that before the collapse of the Soviet Union, the United States would not have thought of blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline. They would have never thought of doing that
but
because
they did worse things than that.
like what?
Well, obviously, they destroyed the whole economy of the Soviet Union.
No, but not as a direct attack.
Well, direct and indirect in many different
Not
ways.
yeah, but
Just
not
like
as
how
a
they're
direct
trying to
attack.
destroy
What they did
China now.
with the Soviet Union was to run them in a race that they couldn't win. But
And the leadership in the Soviet Union was too arrogant. They have to know their own limitations. They have their own spies or whatever.
it's an interesting point you made. You said if there were to be a nuclear war, there would have been a nuclear war already. I think we are closer to a nuclear war now than we ever were.
And it's not going to be a nuclear war. It's going to be uh, uh, um, more like a Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Which cities you gonna drop that on?
Which cities they're going to drop it on? Well, that's up to Russia. And I'm sure the US already know where those two bombs are going to explode.
Okay.
They have to
Brian,
tell
if
each other.
in the last few minutes we have,
Hmm.
uh, what's next for you? I mean, you've done a lot of work over the last 25, 30 years. You did a lot of good work. I'm sure are you satisfied with your life now? Are you satisfied? Have you made what you wanted to make of yourself?
My next stage, obviously, is generational planning with the three boys continuing the law firm. When the Jews couldn't get jobs with white law firms, their law firms had 2 year plans, 5 year plans, 10 year plans, 20 year plans, 50 year plans, 100 year plans. Similarly, people of color has to have short-term and long-term plans, regardless of if a nuclear bomb is going to come. You understand? So the way I look at it, I have a responsibility to have, even though my time might be short, to have a 10 year, to have a 20 year, to have a 50 year plan that the boys could follow and also modify. So we
Right,
have to do long-term planning, you know, from a family perspective, which is good from a community perspective.
right,
So I could say that the Immigrants Journal is 25 years. I hope it would be 50. I hope it would be 75. I hope it would be 100. So
right.
we are building that foundation there. And that's what we encourage people when they come to the office and we do Wills Trust estate planning because people are losing their homes and they shouldn't to the predators in the community. So a lot of people take for granted what they have worked all their lives for. In America, you could be a millionaire by owning one home or two. So you could be a millionaire that easily. And 90% of all millionaires are homeowners, people in the real estate industry. So in order for our people to obviously be better off from one generation to another. Doesn't matter what corner of the Caribbean you come from, home ownership should be your goal. Not necessarily to rent to other people, but each family putting money together, taking a percentage of the home, that equity grows, and then you could take more loans to buy more properties, either here in the US or back in St. Vincent or back in Trinidad or back in Jamaica. So a lot of Caribbean people need to follow what Jamaicans have done in terms of creating generational wealth, having their home here and having a home back in Jamaica. It's good for the Caribbean. It's good for them here in the US.
Well, a lot of people are doing that across the region, not only
Mhm.
not only in Jamaica.
Yes.
I wanna thank you, Brian. I wanna thank you for coming in and
Not a
talking
problem.
to us tonight. You covered a lot of ground,
I know.
particularly in what immigrants can do. I am a little concerned though
Mhm.
that the way in which things are going now, and the ways in which both political parties in the United States are making immigration into almost an exclusionary issue. And I think that presents real problems to people from our parts of the world, don't you
Yeah.
think?
Well, yes, and that's why I say to Caribbean people, Vincentians, get your backside in Brooklyn, New York, come to 26 Court Street. I will guide you to your path to, you know,
Right,
legalization. But just getting into the country is the first, obviously, step. And, we will help them, obviously, put them on the correct path to
right,
legalization, whether they came from the Canadian border, whether they come from the Mexican
right,
border, whether they come as a visitor to the US. And people who have those visitors' visas, they should really think about what they want to do before the visa expire. Because if they have a presumption that those visitors' visas may be renewed, that may not be the truth,
right. And
especially
you see, and you said if it's expired for 6 months, you're bad for 3 years. If it expired for a year or more, you're bad for 10 years.
right.
So
And they
just
don't
let
even
our
have to,
people.
right. And they don't even have to leave the Caribbean. They could go to our website, ask the lawyer,
Right, I
www,
was just gonna do that.
and
For those
schedule
of us
time.
who want to check Figure and Associates, you can visit www.askthelawyer.us. If you There's a telephone number 855-768-8845 to get in touch with Mr. Figaro. I can tell you I've known him for a long time. Uh, way back
Yeah,
what
and you know, if they
80.
say if they say they love you, they could take 50% off their consultation fee. They save them some US dollars.
Well, there you have it. If
All
you
right.
if you if you if you come and say that Jomo Thomas recommended you, you have a reduction in your consultation fee. But Brian, thank you so much for spending the last hour and 50 minutes with us. It's a pleasure to see you
Thank you
again,
very
to
much.
talk to you, and
Yes.
to relive some of the struggles that we went through as young students at Brooklyn College, and to hear you blossom into the
Mhm.
activist attorney that you have become. Thank you so much.
And I'd like to say,
Oh,
Joe, that you contributed to, you know, how I think about a lot of issues also. You were a great influence on my education and the person that I am today. And I want to thank you for that. Okay?
well, it's a mutual love fest here tonight.
Yeah.
Look, people, those of you who stayed with us for 2 hours, for the last 2 hours, we want to thank you so much. Those of you who asked questions or commented, we want to thank you even more. I know that there are so many other things that you could have done. You chose to be with Voices. Remember, read, pay close attention, because what you don't know can kill you. Until next week, this is Jomo Thomas saying good night from Voices.
Good night, Joe.
VFM 99.9 presents Voices, a talk show that's not just new, it's phenomenal. Voices, it's interactive and thought provokingly different. Voices, hosted